The lantern flickered in Quinton Sawyer's hand as he pushed open the stable door at 2 in the morning, expecting to find nothing but his mare and the bay gelding he had traded for last week. But instead, his boots stopped dead on the straw-covered floor when he saw a woman curled up in the corner stall. Her dark hair spread across a saddle blanket like spilled ink, her dress torn and mud-stained, and her breathing so shallow he thought for a moment she might be dead. His heart hammered against his ribs as he approached slowly, the lantern casting long shadows across the rough wooden walls of the stable he had built with his own hands 3 years ago when he first settled in Delta, Colorado, a town nestled in the valley where the Uncompahgre River met the Gunnison, where the air was thin and clean, and the mountains rose up like cathedral walls on every side. The woman stirred as the light fell across her face, and Quinton saw that she was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with skin pale as creek stones and lips cracked from thirst. Her eyes opened slowly, dark blue like the sky before a storm, and they filled with immediate terror when she saw him standing there. She scrambled backward into the corner, her hands raised defensively, and her voice came out hoarse and desperate. "Forgive me," she whispered, her whole body trembling. "Please, I did not mean to trespass. I will leave right now. I will go. Just please do not hurt me." Quinton set the lantern down on a post and held up both hands to show he meant no harm. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, with dark hair that curled at his collar and gray eyes that his mother had always said were too serious for a young man. He was 27 now, old enough to know that a woman this frightened had reasons that went deeper than simple trespassing. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly, keeping his voice low and steady the way he would with a spooked horse. "You are safe here. Are you injured?" The woman stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she could trust him, and then she seemed to collapse in on herself, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Quinton saw then that her wrists were bruised, dark purple marks that looked like fingers had gripped her too hard, and there was a cut above her left eyebrow that had bled and dried in a thin line down her temple. "I did not know where else to go," she said between gasps for air. "I have been running for 2 days. I thought this stable was abandoned. I just needed somewhere to rest. I will leave now. I promise I will not cause you any trouble." She tried to stand, but her legs buckled beneath her, and Quinton moved forward instinctively to catch her before she hit the ground. She flinched at his touch but was too weak to pull away, and he could feel how thin she was beneath the torn fabric of her dress, how her whole body was trembling with exhaustion and fear. "Stay," he said, and the word came out more forcefully than he intended. He softened his voice and tried again. "Stay forever instead." The words surprised him even as he spoke them, but they felt right somehow, as if some part of him already knew that this woman stumbling into his stable in the middle of the night was going to change everything about his carefully ordered life. She looked up at him with those storm-blue eyes, confusion and hope warring on her face, and he saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten with an emotion he could not quite name. "I do not understand," she whispered. "I am saying you do not have to run anymore," Quinton said. "Whatever you are running from, whoever is chasing you, you can stay here. I will keep you safe." She shook her head weakly. "You do not even know me. You do not know what I have done." "Then tell me," he said. "But first, let me get you inside the house. You need water and food and a proper bed. You can tell me your story when you have had some rest." She hesitated, and he could see her weighing her options, calculating whether trusting this stranger was more dangerous than continuing to run on her own. Finally, she nodded, and Quinton helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as they made their way across the yard to his small ranch house. The night was cold, as it always was in the Colorado mountains even in late May of 1883, and he could feel her shivering against his side. Inside, he lit the lamps and settled her into the rocking chair his father had made years ago, then brought her a cup of water which she drank so quickly he had to caution her to slow down. He stoked the fire in the hearth until it blazed warm and bright, then went to the kitchen to heat up some of the stew he had made the day before. While it warmed, he wet a clean cloth and brought it to her so she could clean the blood from her face. "What is your name?" he asked as he ladled stew into a bowl. "Katherine," she said softly. "Katherine Jensen. Most people call me Kate. I am Quinton Sawyer. This is my ranch, small as it is, just me and about 20 head of cattle plus the horses. I do some work in town too, at the lumber mill, to keep things running." Kate took the bowl of stew he offered with shaking hands and ate slowly, as if she had not seen food in days. Quinton sat down across from her and waited, giving her time to eat and gather her strength before she spoke. He studied her face in the firelight and saw that, beneath the dirt and exhaustion, she was beautiful in a way that made something ache deep in his chest. Her features were delicate but strong, her jaw set with determination even now when she looked half dead with fatigue. When she had finished eating, she set the bowl aside and took a deep breath. Her hands twisted together in her lap, and Quinton could see her gathering courage to tell her story. "I was married," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "to a man named Harold Jensen. We lived in Montrose, about 40 miles north of here. He seemed kind when we were courting, but after the wedding everything changed. He was cruel and violent, and he drank too much. He would hit me for the smallest things, if dinner was not ready on time, if I spoke too loudly, if I looked at another man, even by accident." Quinton felt anger rising hot in his throat, but he kept his expression neutral and let her continue. "3 days ago, he came home drunk and angrier than I had ever seen him. He had lost money gambling and he blamed me somehow. He said I was a burden, that I was worthless, that he should have married Martha Holbrook instead. He started hitting me, and I thought he was going to kill me this time. So I grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace and I hit him with it." Her voice broke and tears streamed down her face. "I did not mean to kill him. I just wanted him to stop. But he fell and hit his head on the corner of the table, and there was so much blood. I waited, but he did not move or breathe. I panicked and I ran. His brother will be looking for me. Thomas Jensen is the sheriff in Montrose, and he loved Harold more than anything. He will not believe it was self-defense. He will hang me for murder if he finds me." Quinton leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and looked directly into her eyes. "Did your husband have marks on him from hitting you? Bruises, cuts, anything that would show what he had been doing to you?" Kate nodded. "My blood was under his fingernails. There were bruises on my throat from where he choked me, but Thomas will not care about that. He will only see that his brother is dead and I killed him." "That is not murder," Quinton said firmly. "That is a woman defending her own life. You had every right to protect yourself." "The law does not always see it that way," Kate said bitterly. "Especially not when the sheriff is the dead man's brother." Quinton stood and paced to the window, looking out at the dark shapes of the mountains against the star-filled sky. He knew she was right. He had seen too many times how the law bent to favor those with power and connections, how a woman's word was worth less than a man's, how justice was not always just. "Then we will keep you hidden," he said, turning back to her. "Delta is far enough from Montrose that people do not travel between the two towns often. You can stay here, and if anyone asks, 'You are my cousin from back east, come to keep house for me.' It is a common enough arrangement that no one will question it. Why would you do this for me?" Kate asked, her eyes searching his face. "You do not know me. This could bring you nothing but trouble." Quinton walked back to his chair and sat down, trying to find words for feelings he did not fully understand himself. "My mother was married to a violent man before she met my father," he said finally. "My real father, her first husband, beat her so badly that she lost a baby she was carrying. She finally got the courage to leave him, and she ran west with nothing but the clothes on her back. She met the man I call my father in a town in Kansas, and he took her in and married her and raised me as his own son. He died 5 years ago, but before he passed, he told me that the measure of a man is not in how much land he owns or how many cattle he runs, but in whether he helps those who need helping. You need help, Kate Jensen, and I am offering it freely." Fresh tears spilled down Kate's cheeks, but this time they seemed to be tears of relief rather than fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not need to repay me," Quinton said. "Just stay, heal. Help me around the ranch if you want or do not. Either way, you are safe here." He showed her to his bedroom, the only proper bedroom in the small house, and told her he would sleep on the floor by the fire. She protested, but he insisted, and finally she was too exhausted to argue anymore. He gave her one of his clean shirts to sleep in and left her alone, closing the door quietly behind him. That night, lying on the floor wrapped in a blanket, Quinton stared at the ceiling and wondered what he had just done. He was harboring a fugitive, lying to protect someone he had just met, putting his own life and livelihood at risk. But when he thought about Kate's frightened eyes and bruised wrists, when he remembered his mother's stories about her own escape from violence, he knew he would do it again without hesitation. The next morning, Quinton woke before dawn as he always did and went out to tend to the animals. He milked the cow, fed the horses, and checked on the cattle grazing in the north pasture. When he came back to the house, Kate was awake and dressed, moving carefully around the kitchen as if she was afraid to touch anything. "I made coffee," she said. "I hope that is all right." "I found the pot and the grounds in the cupboard." "More than all right," Quinton said, accepting the cup she poured for him. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly the way he liked it. "Did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Kate admitted. "That bed is more comfortable than anything I have known." I had forgotten what it felt like to sleep without being afraid. They sat together at the small kitchen table, and in the morning light, Quinton could see that the cut above her eyebrow was healing, and some color had returned to her cheeks. She was even more beautiful than he had thought the night before, and he found himself looking away quickly, afraid she would see something in his expression that he was not ready to name. "What do you need me to do?" Kate asked. "I am not accustomed to sitting idle. I can cook and clean and mend clothes. I can help with the animals if you teach me. I want to earn my keep." "You do not need to earn anything," Quinton said, but he could see the pride in her eyes and knew that she needed to feel useful, needed to feel like she was contributing rather than just hiding. "But if you want to help, I certainly would not turn it down. The house could use a woman's touch, and I am a terrible cook. Mostly I just make stew and biscuits and hope for the best." Kate smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her, and it transformed her whole face. "I can do much better than stew and biscuits, I promise you that." Over the following days, they fell into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Quinton would rise early and do the heavy work around the ranch, mending fences and training the horses and hauling water from the creek. Kate would cook meals that were better than anything he had tasted since his mother died, and she cleaned the house until it shone, and she planted a small garden outside the kitchen door where she said she would grow vegetables and herbs. They talked while they worked, sharing stories about their lives. Quinton told her about growing up in Kansas, about how his father had taught him to read from the few books they owned, about how they had moved to Colorado when he was 15 seeking better land and a fresh start. He told her about his mother's death from pneumonia the winter after his father passed, about how he had been alone for the past 3 years, building this ranch from nothing and trying to make a life for himself in this harsh, beautiful country. Kate told him about growing up in Pennsylvania, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress. She had been educated, could read and write and do figures, and she had dreamed of becoming a teacher herself. But her parents died in a typhoid outbreak when she was 19, and she had no other family. Harold Jensen had seemed like an answer to her prayers, a respectable man with a house and a steady job. She had married him out of necessity more than love, and she had paid dearly for that choice. "I thought I could make it work," she said one afternoon as they sat on the porch shelling peas. "I thought if I was a good enough wife, if I kept the house clean and made good meals and never complained, that he would be satisfied. But nothing I did was ever enough. He would find fault with everything, and the drinking just made it worse." "It was not your fault," Quinton said firmly. "Nothing you did or did not do caused him to hurt you. That was his choice, his failing, not yours." Kate looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "How can you be so kind? Most men would think I deserved what I got, that I must have provoked him somehow." "Then most men are fools," Quinton said. "My father taught me that a real man protects those weaker than himself. He does not prey on them. Harold Jensen was a coward and a bully, and the world is better off without him." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Quinton found himself very aware of how close she was sitting, how the afternoon sun caught the red highlights in her dark hair, how her hands moved gracefully as she worked. He was falling for her, he realized. Falling hard and fast in a way that both thrilled and terrified him. He barely knew her, had known her less than a week, but already he could not imagine his life without her in it. One evening in early June, about 3 weeks after Kate had arrived, Quinton came back from town with supplies and news that made his stomach tight with worry. He had heard men talking in the general store about a woman wanted for murder up in Montrose, about how the sheriff there was offering a reward for information about her whereabouts. "They have a description," Quinton told Kate as they sat at the kitchen table after dinner. "Dark hair, blue eyes, about 5.5 feet tall, thin build. It could describe a lot of women, but we need to be careful. If anyone from Montrose comes through Delta asking questions, we need to have our story straight." Kate's face had gone pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she set down her coffee cup. "Maybe I should leave," she said. "I should keep moving west, find somewhere even more remote. I do not want to bring trouble to your door." "No," Quinton said, and his voice came out harder than he intended. He reached across the table and took her hand, the first time he had touched her since that first night when he had helped her into the house. Her skin was warm and soft, and he felt something electric pass between them at the contact. "You are not leaving. You are safe here, and I meant what I said." "You can stay forever." "Quinton," she whispered, and he loved the way his name sounded in her voice. "Why are you doing this, really? It cannot just be because of what happened to your mother." He looked into her eyes and knew he could not hide the truth anymore, did not want to hide it. "Because in these past 3 weeks, you have become important to me, more important than I ever expected. I wake up looking forward to seeing your face over breakfast. I spend my days thinking about what I want to tell you when I come back to the house. I lie awake at night on that floor and think about how you are just on the other side of that door. And it takes everything I have not to knock and ask if I can just sit with you a while longer. I am falling in love with you, Kate Jensen, and the thought of you leaving makes me feel like someone is ripping my heart right out of my chest." Kate's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment Quinton thought he had said too much, had frightened her with the intensity of his feelings. But then she squeezed his hand and a smile broke across her face like sunrise. "I am falling in love with you too," she said. "I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it is too soon and too complicated, and that I am still married in the eyes of the law even if my husband is dead. But I cannot help it. You are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever known. You make me feel safe and valued and seen in a way I never have before. When you look at me, I feel like I matter, like my thoughts and feelings and dreams are important." Quinton stood and pulled her to her feet, and then he was cupping her face in his hands and kissing her, gently at first, and then with all the passion and longing he had been holding back for weeks. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck, and he felt like he was drowning in the best possible way. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinton rested his forehead against hers and said, "Marry me. I know it is fast. I know there are complications, but I do not care. I want you to be my wife in every way that matters. We can have a ceremony here, just the two of us, and before God and the mountains I will pledge myself to you. When enough time has passed and it is safe, we can make it legal and official, but I want you to know right now that I am yours completely and forever." "Yes," Kate said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you. I want nothing more than to be your wife, to build a life with you here." They were married 3 days later, standing in front of the fireplace with the setting sun streaming through the windows, speaking vows they had written themselves. There was no preacher, no witnesses, just the two of them and the promises they made to love and honor and cherish each other for as long as they both lived. Quinton slipped a ring onto Kate's finger, a simple silver band he had bought in town, and she gave him a kiss that sealed their union more surely than any legal document could have. That night, Quinton gave up his place by the fire and joined Kate in the bedroom that was now theirs. They made love slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies, and afterward they lay tangled together in the darkness and talked about the future they would build together. "I want children someday," Kate said, her head resting on Quinton's chest. 3 or 4 of them, running around the ranch and causing chaos. "Is that something you want too?" "I want everything with you," Quinton said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "As many children as we are blessed with. A bigger house, a more prosperous ranch. But mostly I just want days like today, working side by side with you, falling asleep with you in my arms. That is all I need to be happy." The summer passed in a blur of hard work and deep contentment. The cattle thrived on the good grass in the mountain pastures, and Quinton's reputation as a skilled horseman brought him more business than he could handle. Kate's garden flourished, and she preserved vegetables and made jam and kept the house running smoothly. They grew more comfortable with each other, more natural in their affection, and Quinton found himself constantly amazed by his good fortune. But the shadow of Kate's past still hung over them, a constant low-grade anxiety that never quite went away. Every time a stranger rode through Delta, Quinton felt his muscles tense, ready to defend Kate against anyone who might threaten her safety. Kate had cut her hair shorter and taken to wearing it pinned up under a bonnet when she went outside, changing her appearance enough that a casual observer would not match her to the description being circulated. In late August, the danger they had been dreading finally arrived. Quinton was in town at the lumber mill when he heard that a man from Montrose was asking questions at the saloon, showing a sketch of Kate and offering a $50 reward for information about her. Quinton's blood ran cold, and he left work immediately and rode home as fast as his horse could carry him. He burst through the door to find Kate calmly kneading bread dough at the kitchen table, and the normalcy of the scene made him realize how much he had to lose. "There is a man in town from Montrose," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "He is looking for you. We need to be very careful." Kate's hands stilled on the dough, and he saw fear flash across her face before she forced herself to take a deep breath and nod. "What do we do?" "We stick to our story," Quinton said. "You are my cousin Katherine Sawyer from Philadelphia, come to keep house for me. We have been telling people that for months now and no one has questioned it. If he comes here, we act natural and answer his questions calmly. You have changed enough that he might not recognize you, especially if he is working from a description and not from personal knowledge." The man did come to the ranch the next day, riding up the long drive in the afternoon heat. Quinton was working with a green horse in the corral, and Kate was hanging laundry on the line behind the house. Quinton waved her to stay where she was and went to meet the visitor. The man was middle-aged, with a hard face and cold eyes. He wore a deputy's badge from Montrose County, and Quinton felt his gut clench with worry. "Afternoon," the deputy said, not bothering to dismount. "Name is Fletcher. I am looking for a woman about 5.5 feet tall, dark hair, blue eyes. She is wanted for the murder of her husband up in Montrose. You seen anyone fitting that description around these parts?" "Cannot say that I have," Quinton said easily, leaning against the fence post. "There are not many women in Delta to begin with, and most of them I have known for years." "What did this woman do exactly?" "Killed her husband with a fire poker," Fletcher said, watching Quinton's face carefully. "Beat him to death while he slept, from what we can tell. She is dangerous and probably armed." Quinton felt rage boil up in his chest at the blatant lie, but he kept his expression neutral and curious. "That is terrible. I hope you find her soon for everyone's safety. I wish I could help you, but I have not seen any strange women around here." Fletcher's eyes drifted past Quinton to where Kate was taking down sheets from the line, her back to them. "Who is that?" "That is my cousin Katherine," Quinton said. "She came out from Philadelphia back in the spring to keep house for me." "It is not proper for a man to live alone, as I am sure you understand." "I would like to speak with her," Fletcher said, and there was something in his tone that made Quinton's hackles rise. "Of course," Quinton said calmly. "Kate, come over here a moment." Kate set down her laundry basket and walked toward them, and Quinton saw her school her features into a polite, curious expression. She stopped beside Quinton, and he resisted the urge to put a protective arm around her. "This is Deputy Fletcher from Montrose," Quinton said. "He is looking for a woman who killed her husband. I told him we have not seen any strangers around, but he wanted to ask you as well." Kate looked up at the deputy with guileless eyes and said, "How awful. No, I have not seen anyone like that. I mostly stay around the ranch, helping Quinton with the housework and the garden. I do not get into town very often." Fletcher studied her face for a long moment, and Quinton held his breath, waiting to see if the deputy would recognize her. But Kate looked different now than she had when she fled Montrose. She had gained weight and lost the haunted, terrified look that had hollowed out her features. Her hair was styled differently, and she carried herself with a confidence that the abused wife would not have possessed. "Where did you say you were from?" Fletcher asked. "Philadelphia, sir," Kate said. "I came out to Colorado to help my cousin after his mother passed. He needed someone to keep house, and I needed a fresh start after my father died." "Long way to travel," Fletcher said suspiciously. "Yes, sir, it was," Kate agreed. "But family is important, and Quinton is the only family I have left." Fletcher grunted and finally seemed satisfied. "Well, if you see or hear anything about this woman, you send word to the sheriff in Montrose right away. There is a $50 reward for information leading to her capture." "We will certainly do that," Quinton said. "I hope you find her soon." Fletcher tipped his hat and rode off, and Quinton and Kate stood frozen until he was out of sight. Then Kate's knees buckled and Quinton caught her, holding her close as she shook with reaction. "You were perfect," he murmured into her hair. "He did not recognize you at all. You are safe." "I thought he knew," Kate said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I thought he was going to arrest me right there." "He is gone now," Quinton said, "and he has no reason to come back. We are safe." But that night, as they lay in bed, Quinton could not shake the worry that gnawed at him. Fletcher might be satisfied for now, but what if he came back? What if someone else from Montrose recognized Kate? How long could they maintain this deception before the truth came out? "Maybe we should leave," he said into the darkness. "Sell the ranch and head west to California or Oregon, somewhere no one knows us, where we can start completely fresh." Kate rolled over to face him, her hand finding his in the dark. "I will not let you give up everything you have built here because of me. This is your home, Quinton. Your parents are buried here. You have worked so hard to make this ranch successful. I will not be the reason you lose it all." "You are more important than any of that," Quinton said fiercely. "I would give up everything to keep you safe." "I know you would," Kate said softly. "That is why I love you, but I am asking you to trust that we can weather this. Fletcher is gone and he believed our story. We just need to be careful and patient, and eventually people will stop looking for me." Quinton wanted to argue, wanted to bundle her onto a horse and ride west until they were so far from Colorado that no one would ever find them. But he heard the determination in her voice and knew that she was right. Running would mean giving up the life they had started to build, and there was no guarantee they would be any safer in California than they were here. As autumn painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, life on the ranch returned to its comfortable rhythm. Quinton sold some of his cattle at a good price and used the money to start adding onto the house, building 2 more rooms so they would have space for the family they both wanted. Kate helped him with the construction, holding boards steady while he hammered and mixing mortar for the chimney he was building in the new parlor. One evening in late October, as the first snow of the season dusted the mountain peaks, Kate told Quinton that she was pregnant. They were sitting by the fire after dinner, Kate mending one of his shirts and Quinton oiling his saddle, when she set down her needle and thread and turned to him with a nervous smile. "I have something to tell you," she said. "I think I am with child. I am about 6 weeks along, if my calculations are correct." Quinton dropped the saddle and pulled her into his arms, overcome with joy so intense it made his eyes sting with tears. "Truly, we are going to have a baby." "Yes," Kate said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I was afraid at first, worried about bringing a child into the world when we are still hiding, still living with this secret. But then, I realized that this baby is a gift, a sign that we are building something real and lasting despite everything that has happened. I want this child, Quinton. I want to be a mother to your son or daughter." "I want that too," Quinton said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "More than anything, we will make this work, Kate. We will give our child the best life we possibly can." The pregnancy agreed with Kate, and she bloomed with it, growing round and glowing as the winter deepened. Quinton fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest more and not lift anything heavy, and Kate tolerated his hovering with good-natured patience. They spent the long winter evenings planning for the baby, knitting tiny clothes and building a cradle from smooth pine wood. In early March of 1884, when the snow was still deep on the ground but the days were starting to lengthen, Kate went into labor. Quinton rode into town through a late-season blizzard to fetch the midwife, a capable older woman named Mrs. Henderson, who had delivered half the babies in Delta. She took charge immediately, boiling water and laying out clean linens, and she sent Quinton to wait in the kitchen while she attended to Kate. The hours that followed were the longest of Quinton's life. He paced the kitchen floor, flinching every time he heard Kate cry out, feeling utterly helpless and terrified. Finally, just as the sun was setting, he heard the thin wail of a baby crying, and Mrs. Henderson opened the bedroom door with a tired smile. "You have a son," she said. "A healthy boy with good strong lungs. Your wife did beautifully. You can come in now." Quinton rushed into the bedroom and found Kate propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face and said, "Look at him, Quinton. Look at our son." Quinton sat carefully on the edge of the bed and peered down at the baby's face, red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. The baby's eyes were closed, but Quinton could see a fuzz of dark hair on his head and tiny fingers that curled reflexively around Kate's thumb. "He is perfect," Quinton said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are perfect. I love you so much, Kate." "I love you too," Kate said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had never quite settled on anything. Now, looking at his son's face, Quinton knew exactly what he wanted to call him. "James," he said. "After my father, James Sawyer. What do you think?" "James," Kate repeated, testing it out. "Yes, that is perfect. Hello, James. Welcome to the world, little one." Mrs. Henderson stayed for a few days to help with the baby and make sure Kate recovered properly, and then she rode back to town with Quinton's sincere thanks and a generous payment. Quinton and Kate were left alone with their new son, learning how to be parents together. Those early weeks were exhausting and overwhelming and completely wonderful. Quinton discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed, walking the floor at 2 in the morning with a crying baby while Kate tried to catch a few hours of sleep. Kate learned to nurse James while half asleep, to change diapers one-handed, to function on less rest than she had ever thought possible. But there were also moments of pure magic. The first time James smiled, a real smile that lit up his whole face. The sound of his laugh, bright and joyful. The way he would calm instantly when Quinton picked him up and held him against his chest, the baby's ear pressed to Quinton's heartbeat. Watching Kate sing lullabies to their son, her voice soft and sweet in the lamplight. As James grew from a tiny infant into a chubby, curious baby, Quinton felt his love for Kate deepen even further. Seeing her as a mother, watching the gentle patience with which she cared for their son, made him fall in love with her all over again. They were a family now, bound together by blood and choice and the fierce determination to protect what they had built. When James was 6 months old, news reached Delta that Sheriff Thomas Jensen of Montrose had died of a heart attack. Quinton heard it from the postmaster when he went to town for supplies, and he felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. He was glad that the man who had been hunting Kate was gone, glad that the threat to their family was diminished. But he also knew that Kate would feel conflicted about her brother-in-law's death, despite everything he had put her through. He was right. When he told her that evening, after James was asleep in his cradle, Kate sat down heavily in the rocking chair and stared into the fire for a long time without speaking. "I should feel relieved," she said finally, "and part of me does. I know that Thomas would never have stopped looking for me, never would have believed that I was defending myself against Harold. But he was Harold's brother and he loved him, even if that love was misplaced. I cannot help but feel sorry for him, dying alone and angry." Quinton knelt beside her chair and took her hands. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I know. It is one of the things I love most about you, but you do not need to feel guilty for being relieved that the man hunting you is gone. You can feel both things at once. You can be sorry he is dead and glad that you are safe." Kate squeezed his hands and nodded. "With Thomas gone, do you think it might be safe enough now to make our marriage official? I hate living under a false name." I hate that James's birth is not recorded properly because we were afraid to draw attention. I want us to be a real family in the eyes of the law, not just in our hearts." Quinton thought about it carefully. With Thomas Jensen dead, the pursuit of Kate would likely lose momentum. A new sheriff would be appointed in Montrose, someone without a personal stake in the case. It had been over a year since Kate fled, and people's memories would be fading. It was possible that they could emerge from hiding now, or at least take steps in that direction. "Let me make some inquiries," he said. "Quietly, carefully. I will find out what the current status of the case is, whether they are still actively looking for you. If it seems safe enough, we can go to the courthouse in Delta and register our marriage. We can say we were married in a small ceremony last year and just never got around to filing the paperwork. It is not a perfect cover story, but it might be enough." Over the next few weeks, Quinton talked to people who traveled between Delta and Montrose, gathering information carefully. What he learned was encouraging. With Thomas Jensen gone, the investigation into Harold Jensen's death had been shelved. The new sheriff in Montrose apparently had more pressing concerns than pursuing a year-old domestic case, especially one where the accused had vanished without a trace. There was still a warrant out for Kate's arrest, technically, but no one was actively looking for her anymore. Armed with this knowledge, Quinton and Kate decided to take the risk. On a bright morning in early November, they dressed in their best clothes, bundled James up warmly, and rode into Delta to the courthouse. Quinton's heart pounded as they walked up the steps, and he could feel Kate trembling beside him, but her head was held high and her voice was steady as they approached the clerk's desk. "We would like to register our marriage," Quinton said. "We were married last June in a private ceremony, but we never filed the official paperwork." The clerk, a bored-looking man in his 50s, barely glanced up from his ledger. "Names: Quinton Matthew Sawyer and Katherine Jensen." The clerk wrote it down, then pushed a form across the desk for them to sign. "That will be $2 for the filing fee." Quinton paid, and just like that, they were legally married. It felt anticlimactic after all the worry and preparation, but as they walked out of the courthouse into the sunshine, Kate turned to him with a smile that made his heart soar. "We are really married now," she said. "Officially and forever." "We were always really married," Quinton said, pulling her close and kissing her right there on the courthouse steps, not caring who saw. "But yes, now it is legal too. You are Katherine Sawyer, and no one can take that away from us." They also registered James's birth that day, officially recording him as James Harold Sawyer, born March 10, 1884. The middle name had been Kate's idea, a small acknowledgement of the complicated legacy her first husband had left. Quinton had not been sure about it at first, but Kate said she wanted James to know the truth about where he came from, even the difficult parts, when he was old enough to understand. With their legal status secured, Quinton and Kate felt like they could finally breathe freely. The constant low-level anxiety that had colored their first year together began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of security and belonging. They were a legitimate family now, with nothing to hide and no reason to look over their shoulders. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered as Quinton's reputation for raising quality horses spread throughout the region. Kate's garden expanded every year, and she began selling her preserved vegetables and jams in town, bringing in extra income that they saved carefully. James grew into a bright, energetic little boy who loved following his father around the ranch and helping with the chores in his own small way. When James was 3 years old, Kate became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, and she was sick for most of the first 3 months. But by the time summer arrived, she felt better, and in December of 1887 she gave birth to twin girls. They named them Rose and Lily, and the twins had their mother's dark hair and blue eyes and their father's stubborn chin. Quinton found himself completely overwhelmed by 3 children under the age of 4, but he had never been happier. The house was always full of noise and chaos now, with toys scattered across the floor and children's laughter ringing from the rafters. He and Kate were exhausted most of the time, but they were also deeply, profoundly content. One evening when the twins were about 6 months old, Quinton and Kate managed to steal a few moments alone on the porch while the children slept inside. It was a warm summer night, and the stars blazed overhead like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Kate leaned her head on Quinton's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her waist, and they stood together in comfortable silence. "You ever think about that night?" Kate asked quietly. "The night you found me in your stable." "All the time," Quinton said. "I think about how different my life would be if I had not gone out to check on the horses that night, if I had found you the next morning instead, or if you had chosen a different stable to hide in. I think about how close I came to never meeting you, and it makes me realize how much of life is luck and timing." "I think about it too," Kate said. "I think about how terrified I was, and how certain I was that my life was over. I thought I would spend the rest of my days running and hiding, never knowing safety or peace again. And then you walked into that stable with your lantern, and you looked at me with such kindness in your eyes, and everything changed." "I told you to stay forever," Quinton said, smiling at the memory. "I did not even know your name yet, but I knew I wanted you to stay." "And I did stay," Kate said. "I stayed, and you kept me safe, and you loved me when I thought I would never be loved again. You gave me a family and a home and a future I never dreamed I could have. You gave me everything, Quinton." "You gave me everything too," Quinton said, turning to face her and cupping her cheek in his hand. "Before you, I was just going through the motions of living. Working and eating and sleeping, but not really feeling anything. You woke me up, Kate. You made me feel alive. I love you more now than I did the day we got married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to you forever." Kate kissed him, slow and sweet, and Quinton felt the same spark of electricity that had been there since the very beginning. After all these years, all these challenges overcome and joys shared, he still felt that catch in his chest when he looked at her, still marveled that she was his. They stood on the porch wrapped in each other's arms until the twins started crying inside, needing to be fed. Quinton laughed and released Kate, and they went back into the house together to care for their daughters. This was his life now, Quinton thought as he picked up Rose and rocked her gently while Kate nursed Lily. This beautiful, chaotic, exhausting, perfect life with the woman he loved and the children they had created together. As the children grew older, Quinton and Kate told them the truth about Kate's past, in age-appropriate ways. They wanted their children to know that their mother was brave and strong, that she had survived something terrible and built a new life through her own courage and determination. James, as the oldest, was the first to learn the full story, and Quinton was proud of how seriously and thoughtfully his son received the information. So Mama had to run away because she defended herself against a bad man who was hurting her. James asked when he was 8 years old, trying to understand. "Yes," Quinton said. "Sometimes the law does not protect people the way it should, especially women. Your mother was very brave to escape, and I am honored that she chose to stay with me and build a family." "I am glad she stayed too," James said seriously. "I would not want any other mama." The twins learned the story when they were a bit older, and they reacted with the fierce protectiveness that Quinton had come to expect from his daughters. Rose declared that if anyone ever tried to hurt their mother again, She would fight them herself, and Lily said she wanted to grow up to be as brave as Mama. Quinton and Kate exchanged amused glances over their daughters' heads, proud of the strong-willed children they were raising. When James was 12, he started helping seriously with the ranch work, and Quinton realized with a pang that his son was growing up fast. The boy was tall for his age, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's quick mind, and he took to ranch work like he had been born to it. Quinton taught him how to rope and brand cattle, how to break a green horse without breaking its spirit, how to read the weather by watching the clouds over the mountains. The twins were different from each other in temperament, but equally capable. Rose was bold and adventurous, always climbing trees and exploring the creek and bringing home injured animals for her mother to nurse back to health. Lily was quieter and more studious, spending hours with her nose in books and asking questions about everything from the stars to the crops to the history of the West. Quinton loved all three of his children fiercely and equally, marveling at the unique individuals they were becoming. In the spring of 1894, when James was 10 and the twins were 6, a man rode up to the ranch asking to see Katherine Sawyer. Quinton felt his old protective instincts flare to life, and he positioned himself between the stranger and the house where Kate was inside making lunch. "I am Quinton Sawyer," he said carefully. "What is your business with my wife?" The man dismounted, and Quinton saw that he was young, probably in his mid-20s, with a marshal's badge pinned to his vest. "My name is Deputy Marshal William Clark. I am investigating some old cases from Montrose County, and the name Katherine Jensen came up. I understand your wife was formerly Katherine Jensen." Quinton's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "She was. We have been married for 11 years now." "I am not here to cause trouble," Clark said, holding up his hands. "In fact, I am here to close the case officially. The death of Harold Jensen has been ruled an act of self-defense based on new evidence that came to light. A neighbor came forward last year and testified that she had witnessed Mr. Jensen attacking his wife on multiple occasions, and there was medical documentation of Mrs. Jensen's injuries from the night in question. The warrant for her arrest has been withdrawn. I just need her to sign some paperwork, and then the matter will be closed permanently." Quinton stared at him, not quite believing what he was hearing. "You are saying the charges are being dropped? She is free?" "Yes, sir," Clark said. "She was always free, really. The case should never have been pursued in the first place, but Sheriff Jensen let his personal feelings cloud his judgment. The current sheriff asked me to track down Mrs. Sawyer and let her know that she has been officially cleared of any wrongdoing. I am sorry it took so long to reach you. We had trouble finding her until we learned she had remarried and was living under a different name." Kate must have heard voices, because she came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She stopped when she saw the marshal's badge, and Quinton saw fear flash across her face before he turned to her with a huge smile. "Kate, it is all right," he said quickly. "The charges have been dropped. You are free. It is over." Kate's hand flew to her mouth and tears started streaming down her face. Quinton went to her and pulled her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest while the marshal stood awkwardly by his horse, giving them a moment. After Kate had composed herself, she signed the paperwork Clark needed, and he handed her an official document declaring that all charges in the death of Harold Jensen had been dismissed due to self-defense. Kate held the paper with shaking hands, staring at it like she could not quite believe it was real. "Thank you," she said to Clark, her voice thick with emotion. "You do not know what this means to me. I have lived with this hanging over me for 11 years. I am just sorry it took so long to make it right," Clark said sincerely. "Justice does not always move as quickly as it should, but it got there in the end. After the marshal left, Kate and Quinton stood in the yard holding each other, both crying and laughing at the same time. The children came running out to see what was happening, and Quinton and Kate explained that the bad thing from long ago that they had sometimes talked about was finally, officially over. Mama was free and clear, and no one would ever come looking for her again. That night, after the children were in bed, Quinton and Kate celebrated properly. They opened a bottle of wine that Quinton had been saving for a special occasion, and they danced in the kitchen to music only they could hear. And they made love with the kind of abandon that only comes from having a tremendous weight lifted from your shoulders. "I feel like I can finally breathe all the way," Kate said as they lay tangled together afterward. "I did not realize how much tension I was still carrying until it was gone. I am free, Quinton. Really, truly free." "You have always been free," Quinton said, kissing her forehead. "From the moment I asked you to stay forever, you were free. But I am glad that now it is official, that you have that piece of paper to prove it. No more shadows, no more looking over your shoulder, just us and our family and the life we have built together." The years continued to roll by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children growing up. James turned 18 in 1902, a young man now rather than a boy, and he announced his intention to court Emma Mitchell, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Quinton and Kate gave their blessing, charmed by the serious young woman who had clearly captured their son's heart. The twins were 14, on the cusp of young womanhood, and Quinton found himself constantly amazed by how much they had grown. Rose had her mother's gift with horses and spent hours training the young ones, showing a patience and intuition that reminded Quinton of Kate. Lily had decided she wanted to be a teacher, and she was already helping educate some of the younger children in Delta, preparing herself for the career she dreamed of. One evening in late summer, as Quinton and Kate sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, Kate said, "Do you ever wish things had been different? That we had met under normal circumstances, without all the drama and danger?" Quinton thought about it for a moment, then shook his head. "No. I think we became who we are because of how we met. We were forged in fire, you and I. We learned to trust each other under the hardest possible circumstances, and that foundation has held us steady through everything else. If we had met at a church social or a barn dance, maybe we would have fallen in love and gotten married and had a nice life. But I do not think it would have been this life, with this depth of understanding and commitment. So no, I do not wish for different. I am grateful for exactly what we had, even the hard parts." "I feel the same way," Kate said, reaching for his hand. "You saved my life that night in the stable, but you did more than that. You gave me back myself. You helped me remember that I was strong and capable and worthy of love. Everything good in my life came from that moment when you chose to help a desperate stranger instead of turning me away." "It was the easiest choice I ever made," Quinton said. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were important. I did not know then that you would become my whole world, but some part of me must have sensed it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the stars come out one by one. Inside the house, they could hear Rose and Lily arguing good-naturedly about something, their voices carrying through the open windows. It was the sound of home, of family, of a life well lived. When James married Emma in the spring of 1903, it was a big celebration that brought together families from all over the valley. Quinton stood beside his son as best man and felt his chest swell with pride as he watched James pledge his love to the woman he had chosen. Kate cried through the whole ceremony, happy tears that she did not bother to hide, and afterward she hugged Emma and welcomed her officially into the family. The young couple built a house on the far end of Quinton's land, close enough to be part of the ranch operation but far enough to have their own space. James took over more and more of the day-to-day running of the ranch, and Quinton found himself grateful to have his son's strong back and sharp mind to rely on. He was getting older, his joints stiff on cold mornings, and he was content to let the next generation take the lead while he provided guidance and wisdom. In the fall of 1904, Emma announced she was pregnant, and Quinton and Kate were overjoyed at the prospect of becoming grandparents. The baby, a boy they named Thomas, was born in early summer of 1905, and Quinton held his first grandchild with trembling hands, overcome with emotion at the continuation of their family line. Rose found love too, with a young man named Daniel Foster who worked as a blacksmith in Delta. He was a gentle giant of a man with massive hands that could shoe a horse with delicate precision, and he looked at Rose like she hung the moon. They were married in 1906, and Rose continued her work with the horses while Daniel built a smithy on the ranch property, providing essential services to all the ranchers in the area. Lily went away to teachers' college in Denver, breaking her parents' hearts a little even as they were proud of her ambition and determination. She came home for holidays and summers, full of stories about city life and new ideas about education. And when she graduated in 1908, she took a position as the school teacher in Delta, moving back home to everyone's delight. By the time Quinton and Kate celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary in 1909, they were surrounded by family. James and Emma had given them 3 grandchildren, with another on the way. Rose and Daniel had 2 daughters who were the image of their mother. Lily was courting a young lawyer named Henry Peterson, and wedding bells seemed likely in the near future. On the evening of their anniversary, after a big family dinner where everyone crowded around the expanded dining table, Quinton and Kate slipped away to their bedroom for a moment of privacy. They sat on the edge of the bed that they had shared for so many years, and Quinton took Kate's hand the way he had done 1,000 times before. 25 years, he said wonderingly. A quarter of a century since I found you in my stable. Best thing you ever found, Kate said with a smile. The only thing worth finding, Quinton agreed. I was 32 years old when we met, and I thought I understood what love was. I thought it was contentment and companionship. I had no idea it could be this big, this consuming, this eternal. Every day with you has been a gift, Kate. Even the hard days, even the scary days, I would not trade a single moment. Neither would I, Kate said. You kept your promise, you know. That first night you said I could stay forever, and you have made me feel welcome and cherished every day since. You gave me a home and a family and a life beyond anything I dreamed was possible. I love you, Quinton Sawyer, with everything I am. I love you too, Katherine Sawyer, Quinton said. More than words can say, to forever and beyond. They kissed then, soft and sweet. A kiss that held 25 years of shared history and a future that stretched bright before them. Outside their bedroom door, they could hear their family laughing and talking, the sounds of multiple generations gathered under one roof. And Quinton thought there could be no greater happiness than this moment, this life, this love. In the years that followed, Quinton and Kate settled into the roles of beloved grandparents, dispensing wisdom and cookies in equal measure to the horde of grandchildren, who seemed to multiply with each passing year. James took over full operation of the ranch, running it with skill and expanding it beyond what Quinton had ever imagined possible. Rose's horse training business brought in clients from all over Colorado, and Daniel's smithy became known as the best in the region. Lily and Henry married and had 4 children, and she balanced teaching with motherhood with the same grace and competence she brought to everything else. Quinton watched his children and grandchildren thrive, and he knew that everything he and Kate had built together was secure, that their legacy would continue long after they were gone. He was grateful for every day, grateful for the love that had transformed his life, grateful for the woman who had stumbled into his stable all those years ago and chosen to stay. On a warm summer evening in 1920, when Quinton was 64 and Kate was 61, they sat on the porch as they had done countless times over the decades. The ranch was quiet, most of the family having gone home after Sunday dinner, and the sun was setting in a blaze of gold and orange over the mountains. "You remember what you asked me once," Kate said, her head resting on Quinton's shoulder. "Whether I ever wished things had been different." "I remember," Quinton said. "You said no, that you were grateful for exactly what we had." "I still feel that way," Kate said. "Every day of these 37 years has been a blessing. You saved me, Quinton, and then you loved me, and then you built this beautiful life with me. I could not have asked for more." "I am the one who was saved," Quinton said. "I was living half a life before you came. You made me whole." They sat together as the stars came out, hands clasped, hearts full, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and true. The stable where they had first met still stood on the property, weathered by time but solid, a monument to the moment that changed everything. Inside that stable, years ago, a desperate woman had whispered, "Forgive me," and a lonely cowboy had answered, "Stay forever," instead. And she had stayed, and he had kept her, and together they had created a love story for the ages, a testament to courage and faith and the transformative power of choosing each other every single day. As the night deepened around them, Quinton and Kate remained on the porch, unwilling to break the spell of this perfect moment. Around them, the ranch they had built together breathed and settled into sleep, the horses nickering softly in the stable, the cattle lowing in the distance, the creek burbling its eternal song. This was home, built not just of wood and stone but of love and sacrifice and unwavering commitment. And when they finally rose and went inside, hands still clasped, they knew that whatever days remained to them would be lived the same way as all the days before. Together in love, forever grateful for the night a desperate woman sought shelter in a stranger's stable and found instead a home, a partner, and a love that would endure beyond time itself.